And this thing of wanting us to stick to things that make sense in the past because Nelson Mandela said so is something that we really need to look with other eyes. I don't know if that's the proper English. Other eyes, yes. We really need to look at this thing with other eyes because we can't live inside realities that no longer make sense just because Nelson Mandela said so. Hi, hi, people. No, 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 no. We must look at the future. We must make sure that we make decisions that make sense for the future, for the realities of the current times. Back then, when Nelson Mandela was saying all of these things, he said these things because at that time there wasn't a crisis of illegal immigration here in South Africa. It wasn't a crisis. And I don't think he had the vision to see that this thing will turn into a crisis in the future. No, he was just making a decision based off something that made sense at that time. But it no longer makes sense now. Because right now we are inside a crisis as South Africa. And for you to think it's the same reality is just being hypocritical. And for you as the minister, you should be out here fighting to change those kinds of things. Things that no longer make sense for South Africa presently. It's not the time when Nelson Mandela was the president right now. At that time when he made all of these legislations and things like that, he made them because of that reality at that time. It made sense for that reality. But presently, right now in 2025, those realities are no longer the same realities. Right now, South Africa is in a crisis and we need something different. You get what I mean? So this thing of always telling us about things that Nelson Mandela said really needs to come to an end, people.
I met Operation Dudula yesterday. We met for about 3 hours. I took them through this whole process of immigration. And I told them they might be solving what looks like a legitimate problem, but using wrong means. Because in health, we treat everybody who enters there who is sick. And they can't expect us to chase people away when they are sick. Whatever the circumstances of their nationality is just not allowed in healthcare anyway. And they must not confuse issues. There is this belief that healthcare is free in South Africa, but not in any other country in the world. And I want to correct that. Healthcare is free for children under 6 and young women. That was declared by our founding president, Nelson Mandela, in 1995, I think. Yes, so we only offer free healthcare for pregnant women and children under 6 of whatever nationality. The other people are not offered free healthcare. They are charged, but the problem is if you come to hospital without money and there's an emergency, there is no way you won't be treated, because then the Department of Health will be sued. It will be litigated in a way unimaginable. They then proposed to me that because doctors and nurses have signed an oath, have taken an oath of office, and they are forced by the oath to treat everybody. The clerks in the hospital did not take an oath of office. Mm-hmm. We must instruct them not to give anybody a fine if such a person does not have documentation. This was my response to them. Mm-hmm. First, yes, I responded to them in 2 ways. Number one, and I want the country to know that in South Africa, we are at 89% documentation, which means 11% of South Africans are not documented. Mm-hmm. If you look at our population, 11% will be about 6 million people. They don't have any form of document, but they are not illegal because they are in their country. They are South Africans, but they've got no document, nothing whatsoever. They don't appear in any database. And I think the prime example you may remember is Thabo Bester. And we found that most of his relatives were not registered. So I said, if you do it the way you are doing it, you are going to turn away many South Africans.
And I'm starting to think that we don't have ministers here in South Africa. Even the ones that we trusted are out here now speaking a whole lot of nonsense. This man, the Minister of Health, why is it so hard for him to just prioritize South Africans? People, what's so hard about that thing? What is so hard about saying, okay, In our hospitals here in South Africa, in our clinics here in South Africa, we are going to prioritize South African citizens because those are the people who pay tax, and they pay this tax so that they can receive services. So what we are going to do is we are going to make sure that these people who contribute financially, we are going to take care of them. We are going to prioritize them, the South Africans. And then if it happens that all South Africans are properly prioritized, all South Africans are properly taken care of, and we still have an access of medication, or we still have an access of services, then we can direct these services towards other people who come from other countries. That makes a lot of sense. What's so hard about that, people? What is so hard about that? It's simple. Prioritize South Africans, and then if we have an access, then we can lend a helping hand. What's so hard about that? So you would rather South Africans suffer, and you want to take care of people who come from other countries just because Nelson Mandela said so. Nelson Mandela is not our God, people. No disrespect. No disrespect. We know that Nelson Mandela is our hero and all of that. But Nelson Mandela is not our God, people. So just because Nelson Mandela said it, now you will be out here forever wanting to prioritize people who come from other countries instead of South Africans. Nelson Mandela is history. We need to look at the future. How is South Africa going to survive going forward? How are South Africans going to survive going forward? You know, it's strange to me that people think just because something made sense back then in 1990 something or 1980 something, it still makes sense in 2025. People, times change. Just because Nelson Mandela said that thing back then, or he made it a law back then, it doesn't mean it makes sense presently and it's something that we need to follow. No. And what Mandela said, even this thing of Mandela, he didn't say we must give medication to illegal foreigners. As the minister is saying, pregnant women and children. You see, pregnant women and children. But go to our clinics and our hospitals here in South Africa. There's more than that. There's people with all different types of illnesses who need different types of medications, who need different types of treatments. I'm talking about people who are not women, and I'm talking about people who are not kids. I'm talking about elderly people who are illegal foreigners here in South Africa. Elderly people. I'm talking about people in their 40s who are illegal foreigners, who are men here in South Africa, who fight in our clinics wanting free healthcare. Now, are those the people Nelson Mandela was talking about? Those are not the people Nelson Mandela was talking about. He was talking about women, young women and kids, as the minister has outlined. He never said medication must go to men who are in their 30s, who are in their 40s, who are crowding our clinics. He never said medication must go to elderly people who come from other countries. No. He said, what? Like the minister said, young women and children. But is that what's happening in our clinics and our hospitals? That is not what's happening in our clinics and our hospitals. Yes, obviously, there are pregnant women who've been denied healthcare and some kids who've been denied healthcare. But it's because the people who are crowding these facilities is a mixture of all of these people. Pregnant women, elderly foreigners, men. It's just mixed masala. So when Operation Tutula gets there, it's just chasing away illegal foreigners. You get what I mean? And this thing of wanting us to stick to things that make sense in the past because Nelson Mandela said so is something that we really need to look with other eyes. I don't know if that's the proper English. Other eyes, yes. We really need to look at this thing with other eyes because we can't live inside realities that no longer make sense just because Nelson Mandela said so. Hi, people. No. We must look at the future. We must make sure that we make decisions that make sense for the future, for the realities of the current times. Back then, when Nelson Mandela was saying all of these things, he said these things because at that time there wasn't a crisis of illegal immigration here in South Africa. It wasn't a crisis. And I don't think he had the vision to see that this thing will turn into a crisis in the future. No, he was just making a decision based off something that made sense at that time, but it no longer makes sense now. Because right now we are inside a crisis as South Africa. And for you to think it's the same reality is just being hypocritical. And for you as the minister, you should be out here fighting to change those kinds of things. Things that no longer make sense for South Africa presently. It's not the time when Nelson Mandela was the president right now. At that time when he made all of these legislations and things like that, he made them because of that reality at that time. It made sense for that reality. But presently, right now in 2025, those realities are no longer the same realities. Right now, South Africa is in a crisis and we need something different. You get what I mean? So this thing of always telling us about things that Nelson Mandela said really needs to come to an end, people. It really needs to come to an end. And then this other issue that he's speaking about of Operation Tutula most likely chasing away South Africans who don't have documents. I see this is one point that the people who always want to fight against Operation Tutula always sit on top of this point of saying, but there are South Africans who don't have documents, who most likely you are going to chase away. People, I don't know which South Africa you've been living inside. Let me tell you something. If you are a South African, it doesn't matter if you have documents or you don't have documents. If you are a South African, it's very, very easy for you to prove that you are a South African if you are supposed to prove that thing. If maybe you look like a foreigner, let's say you look like a foreigner outside, your appearance, you look like a foreigner, but you are a South African and you also don't have any documents for whatever reason, but you can't tell me you wouldn't be able to prove that you are a South African. And if you are a true South African, you shouldn't feel attacked if you have to prove that you are a South African, because you don't have documents. You don't have documents and you know for a fact that you are a South African. So you should be willing to prove that you are a South African, and it's easy for you to prove that you are a South African. Don't you have neighbors where you stay? Are you telling me around your neighborhood nobody knows your mom, nobody knows your father, nobody knows that you are a South African, you were born here in South Africa? Nobody knows that thing. The people who always like to say Operation Tutula is going to chase away even South Africans think we are dumb. They think we cannot tell illegal foreigners from South Africans. You know, for me personally, as Emmanuel, I don't need documents for me to tell whether you come from South Africa or not, especially if we conversate. Maybe I might not be able to tell if I'm just looking at you, I might not be able to tell. But once we start talking, once we conversate, me and you, we talk about something. It doesn't matter what we speak about, anything. We might speak about music, we might speak about culture, we might speak about politics, whatever religion that we speak about, whatever topic we will be speaking about. I'm going to tell whether you are a South African or not, based on your experience, based on your language, the way you speak, not accent, the things you talk about, people, your moral values. There are many different things that tell us apart from illegal foreigners here in South Africa. And I can tell you that a person who is a South African is going to prove that he's a South African using many ways. And the people who always say we wouldn't be able to tell if a person is South African or not, those people are just delusional. I don't know if maybe they don't know how to do that thing, but we know how to do it. Personally, I wouldn't be confused by a South African. A South African, I know South Africans. I know it doesn't matter which part of South Africa you come from, whether you come from Venda, whether you come from Middelburg, whether you come from Witbank, whether you come from Johannesburg, KZN, anywhere here in South Africa. I will never be confused by a South African. A South African, especially if we start talking, maybe if I haven't spoken to you, but once I start speaking to you, I can tell whether you come from South Africa or not. So people should stop using this excuse of saying Operation Tutula is going to chase away even South Africans, as if Operation Tutula is delusional. They can't tell who is a South African and who's not. No, people. And if maybe it happens that you are chased away as a South African in any sort of clinic, make sure that you take steps to prove that you are a South African, because you don't have documents. You don't have documents. Why you don't have documents, we don't know. But you should take the steps to prove that you are a South African, because you are the one who doesn't have documents. You should try, maybe go to the police station, do some sort of affidavit or some sort of document that you will have with you that is going to take you out of situations that make people think you are a foreigner. You should take those steps. You're the one who doesn't have an ID, a letter from the police, something official. You should try and have that thing so that whenever people want to chase you away because you don't have an ID and things like that, you can say, no, I'm a South African. I have this document. You see, the police signed this document. Something. You can do something. But then this is just an excuse that is used by people who want to defend illegal foreigners here in South Africa. That is what I wanted to bring to your attention in this episode of The Spotlight. So please tell me on the comment section down below, what do you think about this whole situation? But then if you just enjoyed this video or you learned something new, please leave a like and subscribe to this channel. I would really appreciate it. My name is Emmanuel and this is Mzansi University, the place where we transform lives through knowledge and information. Let's meet again on another video.